Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Sustaining Conversations. Tonight, we're going to be talking about rediscovering God in creation. My name is John. I run Hazelnut Community Farm. We've just celebrated our 1 year birthday. So even though we've kind of existed as an idea and a community growing for about 2.5 years, we've had land for 1 year. So it's been really exciting. All that's happened even just within 1 year. So I'm going to hand it over to Lucy now. Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I think I should be spotlighted for you all. 1 second. There we go. Yeah, I'm Lucy. I know John from when I was in Bristol doing theological college, training to be a vicar. I'm now up in Sheffield. I'm a third-year curate here, leading a church plant on an urban housing estate, which is good fun and very challenging. And yeah, I lead or will lead the Hazelnut Potting Shed, which we'll talk to you a little bit about later on. But it's a project we're really excited about in helping to equip communities and individuals who want to do worshiping communities around growing communities. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit about that later on, but that's who I am.
Great. Lucy's awesome. So I'm so excited to be doing this with her. We're good friends, and this is excited for Potting Shed as well. So we'll talk about that more later. So I'm just going to start with a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. So Lord, we just bring this whole time before you, and we ask that you bless it, and that we'd encounter you, each other, and creation. Amen. So a little bit of an apology in advance for so many people that are on here that are a part of Hazelnut, because you'll have heard this story before or maybe even recently, but it's worth retelling, I think. So I am kind of a self-confessed non-natural eco person. So my wife, when we got married, I was always just astounded by how she could be in beauty and just make the connections to her spiritual life. And just kind of, she could see a tree and just melt and be like, oh, I'm recharged. I just love creation. And I was just like, okay, like, yeah. And it's just always been that way. I mean, I'm not dead on the inside, so I still do like see big vistas and beautiful areas and really enjoy it. But it wasn't just kind of this daily thing. But really this kind of like journey of kind of awakening to creation really started back in Edinburgh. So I'm from America, and I wanted to try ordination within the Scottish Episcopal Church to start with. So my family moved from America all the way over to Edinburgh, and we landed there. And we had a newborn daughter, well, right before we moved. And then within 2.5 years of living there, we had our son, Will, which meant that kind of the 4 years we lived in Edinburgh were all little kid years. So we didn't really travel that far. We didn't make it up to Orkney or anywhere, but we did actually spend one horrible day in Lindisfarne. That's another story. It's a holy island, and it was wholly horrible for us, mainly because of little kids crying for Mr. Whippies. But anyway, that's another story. But we did go out to the borders down to Melrose Abbey. And Melrose is a beautiful little kind of town anyway. And in the heart of it is this ruins of a monastery. And you can kind of go through it. And it's, kind of like there's no ceiling. There's just cement arches, portions of wall. And where the whole main kind of, the main aisle would have been is now just kind of grass and walking area. And so we were walking through this area, and they had boards up that kind of described how it would have been in its day when it was most active. And it described the life of these monks as so integral back to the community. So it said that they would have educated people, they would have welcomed people in as sojourners on their journeys of faith. They would have had a rule of prayer, a rule of life that they would have lived together, medicine, education, and then also that they would have grown and fed. They would have grown loads of food and fed people as well. And as I read that, I just felt like this is church. This is what we should be doing as church. So it kind of put me on this weird journey of looking into kind of monastic rules of life, and came across this weird phrase, new monasticism. I don't know if you guys have ever come across that, but The idea of new monasticism is us. What can we learn from these ancient kind of monastic monk communities that we can pull forward and take bits of from today? And so it really captured my imagination. So I read about it. I thought about trying to start some of these things, and nothing ever quite got any traction. So all of a sudden, we fast forward a number of years and two moves, and I'm at Trinity College, and I've studied, and I seem to be every essay. I don't know if have you ever written an essay if you've ever been at university or in school, and no matter what the essay is, you have a favorite topic that you work into that essay. And for me, no matter what it was about, I'd work in this kind of new monasticism. I'd find a way to quote somebody, and yeah, but that kind of nothing ever really came of it. Lucy and I tried to start something called Common Hope. It kind of got started. We didn't quite know exactly what it was, and it kind of just fizzled. So I started my curacy in Bristol, and I just kind of was praying and wondering, what is this thing? Where do I give my time? What's the issue of today that I really need to kind of address and that I want to spend my time working towards? I was praying a lot about it at the time, and I think a lot of kind of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like dangerous prayers, where you pray a prayer and you know this is a bit dangerous that I'm praying this. And it was kind of the dangerous prayer for me was, God, will you just show me, like, show me what I could do, like show me what I should do. I'll do anything, just show me. Praying to God, I'll do anything. The next thing you know, you might start a farm. Anyway, so I took my kids after praying that prayer, and we went down to Windmill City Farm in the heart of Bristol. Now, Windmill City Farm is this, like, it was a forgotten and like bombed out horrible place. It was during World War II. It was totally bombed. It was literally left to be so overrun with rats that people couldn't even walk through it. And so the council decided to get in charge of it, and they said, "This is it. We're going to clear this space, and we're going to tarmac the whole area so that we can have a place for lorries to park." And the local residents were like, "No, you cannot do that." And they basically organized, they got together, and they formed Windmill City Farm. And so what could have been tarmac, this bombed out, forgotten space, becomes a hub that people gather around. So I take my kids to this place, and it was one of the most beautiful days. I still remember it now. It was just like, just to get my kids off of screens and to run around. And it felt like how I grew up, off screens, running around, climbing trees, getting a bit dirty, skinning your knees, you know? And as we were just enjoying the sun beating down this place, I looked around, and it felt like that day in Melrose Abbey. It felt like I was seeing this kind of new monastic community. It looked like there was a whole range of different ages there. There was lots of, it was totally diverse. There was such joy. There was people with education and spaces for people to come and have their little businesses. There was food being served. There was allotments and animals. And I just thought, this is like such a beautiful place of peace for the city. The only thing that it's kind of missing is a rule of life, or kind of a joined up way of praying. And I just thought, what if we did something like this, but had a spiritual life attached to it as well? So that was kind of a radical thought as I was staying there. I thought, oh my word, that sounds amazing. I would love to be a part of something like that. And kind of jointly with this experience, where my eyes were open, really, was I had what Pope Francis calls in his book Laudato Si. He calls it a climate conversion, where your eyes are opened and you just see the importance of the climate emergency. And not only do you see the importance of what's happening in the world, but you encounter creation in a whole new way through the eyes of the creator. So I'd say I very much had a climate conversion, where I went from kind of being one of those normal folks in Britain, which I think a lot of British people are like, not a climate denier. You know, climate emergency is real. It's probably in your top 10 of like important issues, but you kind of, what are you going to do about it? It's just difficult, right? I came out of there with two things in my mind. Number one, creation is beautiful, and we cannot let this go aside. This is the issue. And number two, I want to start a city farm church. I can't see all your faces, but you should be looking at me weird. You should ask. Everyone I told from that moment on gave me this blank look like, are you joking? You want to start a city farm church? If you know me, it's because I have no history in farming. I have no history in agriculture, but I just felt like I think we can gather people around this and have a go. So what happened is that we started this, like, when I say we, just really anyone that would listen to me. I started talking to anybody that would listen to me, literally anybody. People, I remember one lady at our where I was a curate at church. She was putting the toys away from the nursery, and I basically accosted her and was like, "You want to talk about city farms?" You should have seen her face. She's like, "No, I'm not impressed." Anyway, she's only come once. But I would talk to anybody, and what I found was that some people instantly got the idea, and other people just thought, I can't see it. Like, it just seems too kind of crazy for me. So those, like, people that kind of formed together became the core of Hazelnut. So you kind of, maybe long story short, is that we realized after a bit of time that going straight from this idea to a city farm was quite a big jump. But what we did think is that we could step back and think about community gardens, knowing that in time we would grow into it and we'd have others with expertise that could come along. And so we still very much have in mind those larger spaces that could be kind of city farm-esque. But at the moment, we're kind of, yeah, starting community gardens. So, yeah, so I don't want to talk forever about that journey. But what has happened is that in Bristol, we've been able to have, we got a space in a community garden that couldn't be looked after anymore in Lochleys. And then in March, we started looking after also one in North Horfield. And it's just been an absolute joy. It's been stressful at times, it's been challenging, but it's also just kind of, been wonderful. So this is kind of like where I transition now. And I want to tell you guys about kind of this more close to the topic of rediscovering God in creation. And this is this kind of, what are some of the things that I've encountered that have been unexpected in this whole journey as I've thrown myself onto the land, literally thrown myself into taking care of these pieces of land. So the first thing is really kind of personal, is that as I found myself going through this process of starting things, it just caused a whole lot of questions to come to me about, I'm a vicar, about what being a vicar looks like, things that I like and that I don't like about it. And I think it's a really healthy place to have to ask questions sometimes about not only your calling, but about structures, about power dynamics, about things that are healthy, things that are unhealthy. And I've just only realized as I went away, sorry, someone's asked question about tickets. Yes, you can still join. They should be still available on the website. So we went away on holiday this summer, and I just went swimming in the sea every day. And I just realized, oh my word, I'm in this time of just questioning a lot of things. But what I found is that in the midst of this kind of, if you've ever questioned big questions around faith, around God, I think what's happened for me, instead of feeling like I was deconstructing my faith, I feel like scaffolding had gone up and we're kind of growing my faith, stretching into new territory. And even that can feel really disorientating and really scary. And there's questions about, some of these things. How do you question these things about God? And at some points, it's around God. How do I know that I even know you? And one of the stories about that is just around coming from an American way of viewing Christ. I'm American. I came from that tradition, and coming in now, I see Trump and some of the ways that people that taught me how to pray and live being. And I wonder, wow, these are the people that taught me how to pray and taught me about God. How much of that is their residue, and how much of it is God, and how much of it is just culture? And those are really powerful questions. So in the midst of all of this kind of disorientation, I found myself just watering a piece of land. I found myself weeding it. I found myself wanting to plant into it and think about it. When it got hot out, I wondered if the polytunnel was going to literally fry plants. When it was raining, I was happy that it was getting a bit of water and I didn't have to do that. It was natural. And at sometimes I would just finish and I would be absolutely filthy, dirt under my fingernails, sweaty, disgusting. And I would sit down and I would be in the midst of this garden that I cared for, and I felt so anchored. There's something about it, it's just become my anchor, caring for creation. It's become a place of like a living theological reflection, a place where I get to work out my theology and my thinking that's kind of living and breathing as we plant it. So the first thing that about like my rediscovery of God is how much caring for creation is a part of my spiritual journey and actually really valuable as I grow and think about my faith. So that's the first thing, kind of how I've rediscovered God within creation. The second thing that I've noticed, and I just kind of go through the list here and then do some questions, is that what I've noticed is that I have to just not focus on myself as much. Have you guys ever talked to somebody who's like a proper good gardener? I've met a few now where they're really good gardeners, and I always say to them, "You are a good gardener," and I've never met a gardener that doesn't answer the same way. No, not me. I don't know that much about gardening. I'm just learning. I reckon if I met Monty Don, I'd say, "You're a good gardener." And he'd go, "No, I don't. I hardly know anything." I think the reason that is because any good gardener knows that you can do everything the right way and it still might not work. There's just a letting go that has to happen when you take care of something. I've followed some websites. Someone went on there and they said they've been growing for 25 years. And the first 3 years they were growing, they grew the most beautiful cauliflower. And they've not been able to grow a one since. And this is someone who's been growing for a long time. There's something about caring for creation, it's getting your hand dirty, that you realize that you're not in control. You put a seed in the ground and you have to trust. You have to trust the seed. You have to trust nature to take over. You just can't do anything more. And I feel like that's really helped me kind of reorientate myself from maybe a Christian worldview where you are consuming or looking for answers or saying, "God, show me the way," or being quite worked up in prayer, like, "God, what do I do? How do I serve you?" To maybe just being able to relax and say, "God, here I am. I'm part of this world. Have your way. I trust you." So it's this refocusing away from myself. And I feel like that's one of the things that I've been taught through creation. Another thing that I've encountered in terms of this rediscovery of God is I've just become that really silly person that I described my wife as to be, that kind of just like is always talking and looking around and seeing beautiful things all the time. I wouldn't have it any other way. My kids hate it. We can't go on a walk anywhere and I'll just be like, "Look at that tree. It's beautiful." And my kids are like, "Dad, just shut up. Don't talk about it. Let's just keep going." I'm like, "But it's so beautiful." I just love going, just walking and even seeing little flowers grow up through the cracks. I think what that's done is by opening my eyes to creation, it's actually opening my eyes to God in many ways throughout the day. God is creator. And I just think we get to see his thumbprint of himself within creation. I don't believe in any way that creation is God, but I believe that we can still see God through creation. And it just allows me to see God all the time in many different ways. I get to connect beauty back to the creator. So I've become a bit silly actually. And yeah, I can't going on walks just take a little bit longer for me now. So just is this, I can't see you guys' faces, but I hope this is connecting with you. I'm going to go through a couple more things that I think we've learned as a community of Hazelnut and how we've rediscovered God. And then I'm really happy to take some questions as well. So one of the things I think we've learned as a community at Hazelnut, what we do as a normal practice, our kind of most normal things, is we come together and we pray, and then we get the tools out and we say what jobs need to get done, and we kind of just set to work over the beds. It's a mix of weeding and planting and watering and harvesting. It's really kind of what we do. I have questions around it. And what I've noticed is that on a really nice day when we have a solid number of people come, it just feels like people slot into their spaces. And you'll have people that want to be by themselves, that don't feel that they just need a bit of introvert time working by themselves in a bed or off praying in our peace garden. We've got chats happening around the table, around raised beds. We've got kids running around, being noisy. And all of that is sacred for us. It's all sacred ground. The working together and getting to know one another, it's all sacred. It's an immersive experience. Even as we move into prayer, we've struggled with our language. How do we say now we're going to kind of start the God bit when the whole thing is a God bit? And prayer just feels like a regular movement into continuing on that bit. So how to use that language of like, now we're going to change and do a second, a little more focused God bit. We don't really know the language yet. But I just find that creation is immersive, and I think it's also can be inclusive. We're not perfect with that, and we're still learning how to do really be inclusive, and especially people with chronic pain and things like that. But we're on a journey with that, and I think it's pretty exciting. So we've hit on something that's it's really immersive, and that's fun. What's the other thing? The other thing is scriptures just kind of come to life for us. I think I was speaking to somebody once, and I said, "Oh, God, the Bible talks so much about creation," and this person said, this vicar actually said, "Well, of course, that's all they had back then." I think that's actually what a really weird way to look at it. Like they could be using lots of metaphors and different things, but I think they used creation not because it's all they had back then, but I don't think in the time the Bible was written, throughout that, they had yet lost the image of creation. I think in our modern day, we're not connected to the land. We're not connected to the rhythms of seasons. We're not connected to the work that goes into animals and growing veg as well, fruit and veg. And so in a sense, we've almost lost it. And you can see almost even in preaching and things is that what I've noticed is that sometimes nature becomes a metaphor to mean something else, and we just take out nature itself. And it's been really interesting to take nature for what it is and to reintroduce it back into the scriptures and really read it as from a people that are connected to the land, and for us to relearn those rhythms. And so it's been a beautiful guide for us and been, I think, really powerful. Especially the Psalms have been powerful inspirations. Just two more other quick things I'll share with you. Another thing we've encountered was that we know I've written something down here. I can't read my own handwriting, so I'll just do one more thing now. I'm sure it was going to be awesome. Another thing, just the last thing I'll say that we've learned is generosity. I think that if we think about climate emergency, one of the ways that we've gotten into it is kind of a capitalist way of thinking that says that there's never enough. There's never enough. All of our marketing is based on creating need, whether it's real or imagined, but there's this need that is coming. And so we're having to consume to fill the endless marketing and the endless way that our society is telling us that we can only be who we are if we consume more and be who we are. And then we come to this modern age where we are aware of climate emergency. And I think one of my critiques of the way that it's addressed sometimes is that we continue to use a capitalist mindset. And even though it is very serious, we now we consume green things. And so you've got these things like greenwashing, or that all of a sudden a green movement becomes about eating sourdough bread instead of white bread. And it becomes kind of a middle class agenda issue. Or I think it just becomes something where it's so fear driven that we're expected to convince people about climate emergency by using the same thing that drove capitalism, and that's fear, and that there will never be enough. I think one of the things that the gospel has to say, the life of Jesus has to say about climate emergency, is that even in very serious times, there is a generosity. I just believe that there is, for it to be long-term caring about this, we have to believe the gospel is generous and there's enough for everybody. I do believe there is enough for everybody if we live differently. And also, I think the silver lining of this kind of climate emergency is that there's enough for everybody in ministry as well. At Hazelnut, we're not so keen to just become Hazelnut brand bearers that then create more brand. But we just want to work with everybody, not because we're unique as Hazelnut, but because we're human beings who are going through this situation together, and humanity demands that we work together, and we need a lot of people to work together in a very short amount of time. So we need to be generous, and I'm not really interested about becoming famous John White. I'd rather see a lot of people work together in a very short amount of time. Yeah, so that's generosity. So those are my thoughts. That's how kind of some of the ways that's my story, how I've gotten on this crazy adventure, and also some of the unexpected ways, and only some of them. There'll be more that I'm sure I'll think about tomorrow when I'm out there watering. But I've not looked at the questions. If there's any questions, I think we can answer some now. Yeah, let's have a look. Do we have any out here? Is there any, Lucy, that you've seen that you want to highlight or anything? Any questions? Just write them up now, and I'll just answer the ones that come up next. I don't see any so far.
Just as we will have time for discussion at the end as well, if there's things out of sort of both talks that prompt people to have more questions or thoughts. So feel free to keep putting them in, I guess, as we go.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, we've got one in. I just think my communication was so excellent. Why would there be questions? Just kidding.
Everyone was lost in it, John. That's what it was.
Maybe everyone was just lost. I don't know. Anyway, do you think there's something that can be replicated across church grounds, etc.? Absolutely. That 100%. So someone asked me about this today. Our whole thing is that about Hazelnut is that we're expecting some people to do things like we're doing, but there's a whole range of things that can happen. And I think if you're, for instance, a uni student and you're just got one bedroom, I would encourage you to plant a plant and put it on your windowsill. Yeah. If you have a family home with a bit of garden, you can plant there. If you are a church with land or looking for land, I think absolutely. I think there's a whole gamut of ways that we can all do this together. So part of what we want to do at Hazelnut is kind of want to give away for free any learnings that we have, so that it can be chopped and changed and modified, and for anyone to use it. And we also want to learn from others who are doing things. So that's one of the reasons we're doing the potting shed, so that we can help and be a support for others that want to start growing communities. And we're doing these conversations as well, and we're trying to make it for free as much as possible. Although donations are really encouraged and really helpful for us as well. So yeah, absolutely. I think lots of ways for that to happen.
There are two linked questions here, John. I just thought I'd link them for you so you don't have to keep reading. A couple of people are asking, what do you do a service, or is there any teaching or preaching? Where's the God bit?
Yeah. So we have that's a really good question. So we have our pattern worship is not where it will be at the end of this journey. So I think just to say firstly that we are continuing to journey with this and stretch it to new territory with this. But we have at the moment, our rhythm of worship includes 3 different types of meetings. And some of those we've done more than others because of COVID, but between now and December, we'll be doing all of them. So the first is our normal time that we call Grow Together. And that's the one I explained, where we pray together, get the tools out, work the land, and then we do an evening, then we do a time of prayer together. Like kind of a simple evening prayer. And that will usually include, right now we're doing, we're going to try and be doing a whole kind of broad overview of the Bible throughout the course of the entire year. So right now we're kind of doing a walk through the Psalms as we get close to Advent, and then we're going to do ones on preparations for Jesus coming in light. So that's what we're kind of doing now. So we do that as part of the evening prayer, and we try and include, what I want us to get good at is including God's story, creation story, and our own story. So we do testimonies, we talk about the scripture, as well as we talk about ourselves. And those are what I see as the triangle of like kind of creation, the creator, the creature, and the creation. And then the other one is communion, which we just started. So we kind of meet together, and we've just done our first communion. And the idea is that at the first of each month, we'll actually cook together a meal, eat it together, and do communion as through the course of that meal. And so that becomes a way for people to come around the table. So the way we think of communion is kind of gathering around a table. So if you can imagine it, because again, we're reintroducing each other and creation into our worship of the Creator. So if you imagine a table, we bring our tools and we pot on the table, and we get the seeds out and the dirt out, and then we clear it away, and we bring the bread and the wine on there, and we take that together and we share that out, and then we move that aside, and we bring the soup on and the cheese and the bread, and we eat that together, and that all becomes one fluid movement of creation, Creator, and each other and our community as well. And then the last one that we do is we also do festivals. So we're doing this in October. We're doing Apple Fest, and we're going to hopefully work with other churches on this and open it up to the community. And we're going to celebrate apple harvest, and we're going to have loads of fun and press some apple juice and baked potatoes, and it should be really fun. So we'll do some things like that as well.
There was another question which I thought you get quite excited about, John.
Yeah.
Someone's asking whether your eventual vision includes people living together in community and shared accommodation.
Yes. So I think I'm interested in a whole I think what they do. So Hillfield Fry, if you know about that, is one interesting case where they have actual kind of brothers and monks who are Franciscan living inside families, and I just think that's a really interesting spiritual place, and they're caring for this piece of land. I'm really interested in seeing if Hazelnut can eventually maybe have some larger spaces where people do live and take care of the land, but are mixed with people that still work and go out, and people that come and visit, or even families come together and maybe they chip in for a piece of land, and they're like, we're going to care for these 2 or 3 acres, but we're welcoming people onto this, and it's more of small holdings. I'm interested in churches saying we've got 2 raised beds, and we muck in with Hazelnut, and we know stuff like so. I think anywhere from literally that pot on a student's windowsill up to larger communities is all really valid and needs to be encouraged. And how do we kind of see where people are at having a go as really valuable and go kind of throughout all that. So yeah, absolutely. And I see that there's potential maybe happening sooner than we thought for some of that. Should we guys, these are all great questions. Thank you so much for asking questions. I think what we'll do is so I got one more. Someone says, when you say you're the vicar of the community garden, how does that work? Okay. So basically I'm a curate, and so I'm trained to be a vicar, and they've allowed me to do this as part of my curacy. And we're talking about the diocese about how that will continue. But the two pieces of land that we're on are there. I wouldn't say I'm the vicar as in like no one else can use this land. It's just for the church. So it's kind of structural within the Church of England. And so we're connected with local vicars, and they've said that we could, kind of be there and do communion in their parish. And that's how that works from a Church of England perspective. And so it just kind of works that way. And so we're having that really nice connection with those guys. And so we're connected with local churches. And it might be that we become what they call a BMO, a bishop's mission order, where I can still exist, but doesn't need the permission, but we'll still work with those folks. So that's how it kind of works. But I think I'm not a traditional vicar. I don't wear a dog collar very often. I'm usually more dirty than that. I don't want to sully up my nice church clothes. I'm usually, a bit more dirty and working alongside people. And that's how I want to work as a vicar. Cool. Well, let's hand it over to Lucy now. I'll stop talking. I'll let Lucy share her story, and then we'll have some more Q&A.
Thanks, John. I've just noticed that there's a conversation in the chat about a few things that fit in really well with Potting Shed, and we're going to do at the end of this. We're just going to do a couple of almost notices, sort of letting you know about things coming up with Hazelnut, and Potting Shed's one of those. And some of these questions fit in really well to that. So if it's okay, I'm going to pick them up then. I've remembered them, but I'll pick them up then. So don't feel like you've been ignored. So yes, my name is Lucy. I am a curate, as I've already said, in Sheffield. I work in and live in a housing estate, which on the deprivation index is one of the 5% most deprived in the country, but I think it's one of the most beautiful and brilliant places to live, genuinely. And it's really where I have rediscovered God in creation, walking my dog, litter picking, gardening, growing veg, and helping in community allotments, helping regenerate a local pond with the council. They can do great things sometimes. Being taught to fish, trying to teach kids to fish very badly. I don't think anyone caught any fish when I was teaching them. And through it all, God has revealed something of himself to me in his provision, in renewal, in hope, in the connection with creation, one another, and him through these things. And it's really not the place geographically, visually, aesthetically, that I would have thought that I would have grown deeper connectivity with God through nature. I have far more beautiful places I could connect with God. I strongly relate to John's wife, Pippa, when she sees things in the countryside and like, this is beautiful, look at God. I've always been able to do that. But now I feel like it's what's on my doorstep that helps me to connect with God and rediscover God in creation. And for me, I think that's really been the point of what God's been trying to tell me over the past year. So I thought I'd just share a little bit with you, as well as some of the ways that I maybe do connect to God through nature and that we do as a community. My thought process, so I'm quite an internal processor, and it took me a long time to persuade myself to act and to change the way that I live, the way that we gather community, and all of those kind of things. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that thought process. I'm sure a lot of it won't be anything new to a lot of you. Hopefully some of it will resonate with you, and maybe it can lead to some good discussions later on. So I think a lot of us are going through what John's described as an eco-conversion. And for me, that was part of a change of mindset that's come as part of a wider shift of perspective in my faith. It's been about rediscovering God, but also rediscovering how I connect with God, my role and our role as humans and place in creation in relation to God, both as a church and humankind in general. So my initial shift, kind of similarly to John, I guess, was intellectual far before I ever actually changed anything that I did in my life. I thought all you needed to do to look after creation was to recycle every now and then. And I'll be really honest, I'm still not amazing at that. But I read Laudato Si, the Pope's encyclical. I love that us Protestants are getting converted by the Pope here, John. That's great. And I wrote an essay on reconciliation with the planet, and that really started my brain ticking. And I started to see that our behaviour as humans towards the earth isn't something neutral that we could maybe improve on, but as something so entrenched in our sinfulness that if we don't change, we can't claim to be pursuing God's will for this world or his people. I also realised it's really not a popular way of describing people's actions. I think when you start talking about sinfulness, sometimes people switch off or it gets their backs up. But for me, I think really connecting with God through nature has been about realising my own sinfulness and changing my posture towards God. And nature and creation has really, really helped me to do that. There's this school of thought, which I find really helpful when thinking about sin, and especially our sinfulness in the environmental crisis. And it speaks of sin as disconnectedness, as putting barriers up within ourselves, between us and God, between us and other people.
I think we lost Lucy there. Sorry, Roy. I think you're spotlighted now. So it looks like we'll wait for her to come on real quick. Let me just change this view real quick. She'll come back on, I'm pretty sure. It looks like she just dropped. One of the questions I'll answer that I've been reading while she's been speaking about kind of Arasha. So we're also what we call a partner in action with Arasha. So we're huge fans of Ecochurch and think that actually what we do can sit really alongside well with Ecochurch. especially if you already have a church building or an established church. Ecochurch is a great way for you to start that. I think some of what I think about though around this is about maybe going even another step beyond that. So if you're running a church and you're doing Ecochurch, there's no question that's fantastic work. But what if we also planted churches that started at the gold level of certification rather than built up to that? Does that make sense? So there has to be spaces where we start from where we want to go, as well as build up to where we want to go with what we have. So I think what we're trying to do is say, like, what if we tried to plant almost like a certified church? So we're, that's part of what we're having to work out. Like, one of our problems though is that we're kind of gathered, so people drive in from different areas. I don't live next to the church, so I have to do that as well. So there's some questions we have, but we are introducing a lot of the themes and topics really naturally with what we do to kind of do it that way. Is that helpful? Does that kind of answer the Ecochurch question? Especially because we're I don't want to make it sound like we're someone did say to me once, they said, "Oh, John, you're like a better Ecochurch." And I'm like, not at all. From the early doors when we had this idea, Arusha has been a huge support for us. And we just cannot say enough good things about Arusha, and that's why we're good friends with them and why we work together with them. I guess maybe I could take some more questions while were there any other questions? Let me ask while we'll see if Lucy comes back. I'll answer the question about the local community joining in. So this is like that's such a good question, Lynn. The truth is that this has been one of our hardest parts because of COVID, especially. We kind of gathered through relationally, and then we're wanting to seek to reach out to the community, and kind of COVID hits and so you go online. So what we found is that our community has grown through people that are interested in Hazelnut, but not necessarily just within our local communities. But that's changing really quickly because now that we're out of COVID, there's some issues, things that are happening around schools work and connecting schools. I've just met with a number of new people that are in our local school. We've got things that we're going to meet on Monday with someone with a GP practice and around social prescribing. And we're open this weekend for 2 days with a kind of a garden trail that goes through the whole city, and we're opening them up. So kind of it's where we're throwing a lot of our time, as well as the networking continuing to grow, is around having a welcoming space for those in the community if they want to come and be a part as well. So that has happened. I will say this though, is that it is a bit gathered at the moment, but we've found that we've accidented into a model that is really diverse. So we've got people that come to us that are conservative, that are liberal, that are high church, sacramental, that are low church, that are non-church, that are kind of questioning what church even looks like, and we all mix in together, and it works really well. Equally, our network is made up of things that are communities that have nothing to do with the Church of England, as well as Church of England that are in really urban spaces and rural spaces, that are on estates, that are in cathedrals. And so we get the whole mix of all of this. I think one of the reasons for that is that, again, this common emergency needs to be the unifying factor in a church that is ready to schism. Does that make sense? This is where we need to be kind of connecting around. Yeah, let me see if she's coming back on. It was such a shame. What she was saying was so good. Why don't we take just like a 3-minute break, and I'll check it out and then come back. So you turn the screens off for 3 minutes and come back at 8:50, and then we'll do some more. But just take a 3-minute little stretch break. Okay, everyone, if you want to come back. What I'll do is, if everyone wants to rejoin now, we're still recording, but we'll just kind of crack on. What I'll do now, I'm not sure what happened to Lucy. Hopefully she's okay, but I'll just a couple quick announcements, and then I'm happy to field some more questions as well. And if we need to end a bit early, we can, or I'm happy to stick around until 9:15. This is Lucy here. I'm just gonna take this real quick. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, I don't know. This is live. This is living in Zoom land. No worries. So let me just share my screen and show you guys some things that we're having coming up that we're kind of excited about. So let me share this. So there we go. So next month we have our second conversation. Some of you already signed up for this. As you know, COP26 coming up. This is really a huge issue. There's a huge conference, really important. It's a bit scary. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with this, but Martin Hodgson runs JRI, John Ray Institute. He's a scientist in background, and this talk is going to be around what are the issues around COP. This would be really good if you say you're wanting to talk to your friends about it, or you're in leadership and you want to just kind of get a good handle on what's happening around COP. Come along to this. There'll be lots of questions as well. You get your tickets again, it's free. And this is fairly close to COP, so it'll be important. In November, we're having with Hannah Malcolm and Tim Harris. Hannah is Ordinate, who's written a book on climate grief. Tim Harris is a botanist, switched on guy. And it's going to be about church land and its conservation. So both Hannah and Tim are part of a group that's been lobbying the Church of England to do better conservation with this land and how we take care of it. So they've just really thrown themselves into how land is used, its conservation. So there'll be a mix of kind of the bigger picture as well as questions that we can answer around your own land in terms of conservation as well. So yeah, feel free to come along to that. Next announcement is, this is just an example. We've got all these resources on our website. This is one we just give away for free. You can take it. And so I encourage you to head on over to Hazelnut Community Farm and just take any resources that we've created or used. Use it yourself if you want, rebrand it. It doesn't matter. It can be yours. We're happy to give it away. And lastly, if Lucy comes back on, I don't know. I'm honestly thinking that we just missed the rapture. Lucy got taken up and the rest of us are left behind. Sorry, everyone. We missed it. I don't know. Lucy's gone though, but she'll share with us about launching, about the Potting Shed initiative and its launching. So I think I've seen her come back on, and I'm going to see if we can see Lucy. There she is. I'm going to make you co-host, Lucy.
I have no idea what happened there.
Yeah, it's all right. It was seamless. Nobody knew. It was all planned.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm gonna hand it back to you, Lucy. I've done some announcements and answered some more questions. Wonderful. But if you want to pick back up, we've kind of just kept recording as well. So
that's fine. I have absolutely no idea where I cut out and what I was saying. I could have been talking for 10 minutes without any knowledge. If anyone wants to give me any prompts to what I actually said before I clocked out, that'd be great. About disconnection. Okay, great. I talk a lot about disconnection. Wonderful. So I think essentially what I was trying to say was that I think, John, are you spotlighted for everybody, or am I spotlighted for people? Just checking. I think
yes, you are.
Okay, great. You're spotlighted on mine, but that's all right. So yeah, so I think that last heard about disconnectedness and sin. So let's have a look. I spoke quite a while after that. This is concerning, isn't it? did I talk about connectedness through?
All right, we lost her again. That's okay. We're just gonna have to. We'll just move on, everyone. Sorry about that. Oh, she's back. There you are. Lucy, do you want to just talk about potting shed a little bit?
Yeah, this could be a game we play all night. I'll just very quickly try and sum up what I was saying, and then I'll chat about a potting shed. And if I cut off again, John, you can pick it up. So yes, so essentially what I'm trying to get at is that I really do feel that in our modern world we have become so disconnected from nature that that the sinfulness of humanity is to think that we can be disconnected from nature, and that just connecting in a really practical way through gardening, through growing vegetables, through touching the soil, through trying to regenerate green spaces in your local area, is a prophetic, a symbol of what it means, a symbol and tangible illustration of what it means to work with God towards his new creation, about what it means to rely on God and trust that he will provide for us. And I think for us in our community, we've been similarly to John, we've been worshipping outdoors, been doing family services outdoors all the way through lockdown to mixed success, but being able to use nature to communicate about who God is has been so valuable in our teaching. It's captured the imaginations of children in a way that is really, really beautiful and has taught me a lot. And I think it has helped us to change our posture towards God and towards one another. When we realise that that we are all interconnected, when we realise that climate change is a humanitarian crisis as well as an environmental one, and that we are not treating our fellow humans well through the way we treat the planet, when we realise these things, then we change our posture towards God. We realise our role in the earth, we realise our connectedness with one another and with nature, and it is absolutely vital. I may have just repeated myself there, I may have not, because I have no idea what you already heard me say, but that's a summary, and maybe I can send out my notes if anyone is particularly interested in what I had to say, and maybe in discussion and questions I can chat a little bit about what we're actually doing. But essentially, I really do believe that rediscovering God's presence in nature can help transform how we treat our planet, and it can help transform the world. Genuinely, I think if within the environmental crisis, if we as those who have a hope and belief in God can turn to him in this and try and work alongside him, it puts a voice of hope in a time of absolute despair when you look at where the planet seems to be going right now. But also through engaging with creation, we can also grow closer to God, because I really do think that it helps us understand better who we are as those who rely on him, who rely on the beautiful ecosystems he's put around us, and rely on one another as well. One of the really great things that we've accidentally done in our community is the veg that we've grown. Someone's been took it round to a few houses, and also then got given a load of stuff from a supermarket that had been taken out of the bins, and then that went round the houses, and we ended up doing this whole food swap thing. And that was for me a beautiful marker of that connectivity of different ways of trying to be environmentally friendly and care for one another, just working together. And things like that are just a beautiful symbol of connectivity, essentially. So if anyone would like the full thing that I was intending to say, I'm very happy to send it to people if you just drop me your email address. But I'll leave it there because I don't want to repeat myself in case I have already said things. But yes, potting shed, and I think that leads quite well into potting shed. Is what we are doing as a response to the fact that we feel that a lot of people are trying to do similar things that we're trying to do. So John and I, about when he first started Hazelnut, I think only a couple of months later, I rang him and said, I've got this plot of land and I haven't got a church building yet, and I'm not really sure what to do with it, but I've heard you're doing this thing and I think we could maybe do something with it. And we've realized through the year and through, very recently, I've had 3 emails this week from people, very, very similar things. So what we would love to do is provide people who are thinking maybe as a church community, we would love to embody this creation care, embody engaging with creation to help us see God, to help us rediscover God. And would like to do that through a tangible growing project, allotment project, community garden as an expression of church. So whether it be the way John does it in Bristol, whether it be something a little bit different, we just want to equip that. So what we're hoping to do is have a cohort of people on the same journey, doing similar things, and we will be trying to equip you with everything you need in your toolkit to start off well. And we'll have sessions led by partner organizations, people who really understand gardening to a level that we don't, who can help you with crop rotations, to people who can help you source church land or other land to put your community garden in, to people who can help you put together a liturgy or a service for how to do a family service outside or a communion outside. And it'll be a program that will run from January right through to summer. And the idea is that's from a place of preparing the ground to a place of harvest. And we would love it if you are interested in that to get in touch and to let us know. So if you, on our website, there is on the Potting Shed page, there is a link at the bottom which will take you to my email address. If you are interested, drop me a message on there and we can chat about how we can maybe support you and how you can be a part of that. Also, if you want a copy of what I was going to say, also do that and I'll send it to you that way.
That's great. I think just to add to what Lucy's saying just a little bit too is even if you're not a church or you're an individual and you're thinking, oh man, I've got an allotment plot, I'd love to gather some people around this. You could also join and kind of explore that with us as well. And you can have that conversation as well, unless you're already a church or you're just an individual or a group of people that are wanting to do something. And I think that kind of goes also back to like kind of what's our let me see if I can find the actual question, but what's kind of our statement of belief. So what we've done is we've got a statement of values that we have that we adhere to, and you can find those on our website. The only kind of statements of belief that we ask people to sign up to are two, quite simple, is that you're distinctively Christian and that we're going to be and that you're growing to give away as in regards to climate emergency, so that you're giving away a minimum of 50% of your food. The reason why we keep that really simple is because, like for instance, in Bristol, we meet at 3:00, so that people can also go to other worshiping communities and go deeper in other issues. But we're kind of laser beam focused on being distinctly Christian and growing and giving away food and thinking about transforming pieces of land. So we've kind of kept it slightly broad that way, but it doesn't mean that we don't have conversations within our community. That's just all that we ask for you to be a part of our community. So it's pretty open that way. Happy to answer any more questions as well. So ask your questions and we'll kind of answer any other questions that come in. Let me look at, there's one more that's coming here, and feel free to jump in on any of these, Lucy, as well. So yeah, put your questions in. We'll have a little bit of Q&A here now. So I got one from Lynn here. It says, we run a community garden, not church linked, and two things you need are funds and people. We have found this over the last year. Yeah. So one of the things that I would say is you need energy as well. So in order to do any kind of, this is just something I was told when I was younger, is that in order to do any kind of like project, you need three things. You need fun, you need money, people, and energy. And if you're short on one, you need more of the other two. So if you have no money, you need more energy and people. If you have no people, you need more energy and money. Does that make sense? And it's totally true. So even at Hazelnut, we're still kind of working out that link as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's an ongoing thing. But I think that's one of the reasons we want to support each other. So an example of this is because of COVID, like our volunteers, we've got great volunteers, we've got great members of our community in Bristol, but people have been kind of all over the place, like visiting people as we come out of COVID. We haven't been necessarily consistent on the weekends. So some days we'll have, 5 people, and some days we'll have 30 people. It's like, it's just been kind of ups and downs. And it was really great talking to Lucy, talking to Sophie, who also runs one of our other sites, and just saying they've experienced the same things. And it's been helpful to know. For me, it's been helped me to relax, be like, this isn't a John issue. This is the world post-COVID, or not even that we're out of it, but just where you can go visit family. Just people's time is just a bit different right now, and we need to have grace for people. So it's that type of support that we have for one another that I think is really good and helps you do that. Joe asked, are your different community gardens linked? Do you want to answer that, Lucy?
Yeah. Yes is the answer to that. So essentially through Hazelnut, what we wanted to create, again, potting shed of people just starting out, and then we have a general collective of people who are on this journey together, maybe a little bit further along, or have been already doing this for a while, who we just connecting together. We see ourselves having a collective harvest. So around the country at the moment, I think our main 3 are here in Sheffield, down in Bristol, and in Wales with Sophie. But we do have some other people sort of thinking about what they're doing and doing similar things. Some in Peterborough, some in just all over the country, really. So, but the idea is we see ourselves having collective harvest. So at the end of the year, we can say, look how much we've given away. And we see ourselves as a supportive community as well. And the hope is that as this develops, people who do potting shed can kind of move into that and stay within the supportive community if that's helpful for them. And we can do things like have residentials where we all get together and talk about how the carrot crop wasn't very good this year or whatever, So yes, they are connected. We hope spiritually and practically in a little way as well.
Great question. I'm happy to, any other questions coming in? I don't think I've seen any others, but happy to just give just a moment for any other questions that would come in. If you're able to unmute yourself, I don't know if you can or not, or else just type them in, but we're happy to answer any questions. Cool, well, I'm gonna stop the recording then at this time.